I don't know about you, but I've learned that ideas have power. The ideas that take residence in our minds steer our thinking. Our thinking drives our actions, and our actions determine our results and ultimately our destiny. Ideas, both good and bad, have steered human history and will determine the results of your day. My hope is to curate and pass on some of the best ideas. Ideas that create positivity, that build momentum, and produce extraordinary results. Ideas that build better businesses. Hey everyone, Dylan here, sitting with Angela.
Hello everyone.
And we're excited to jump into, well, the continuation of our conversation about survival to stability, success, and significance. I'm really loving this framework.
Me too.
And what we're going to jump into this morning is really just a brief overview of systems. Mm-hmm. We rolled out the module, the overview of systems. We have all four of these put together.
Yeah,
we're
so excited.
Excitedly and feverishly working backstage to map out all the modules for the remainder of the year and really for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
This is a mission for us, guys. We know what we do here. We help agents build better businesses. We know that starts with a unique process that's different than most of our peers. We're obsessed about building relational businesses and ultimately businesses that work 100% by referral. And we know how to do that. We've been doing that for 20 years. We've also always been passionate about building better businesses, not just with a better idea, but also a better set of systems and thoughts and infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so our framework for that, as you guys know, has always been progressing from survival to significance across the 4 major areas of your business: your leads, your systems, your team, and your money. And we got so much cool stuff coming out for you guys. And so we're really excited about the next several years. We're maybe pre-launching systems intentionally because we know that this year we've got a lot of, we're planning to launch several models, actually all three of the transitions
by the end of the year.
Yeah. Why don't you talk through that timeline real quick?
Yeah, I mean, so while we're also wrapping up money, so we have a couple more transitions on money coming this year, but our 3 transitions for systems kind of rolling out starting in April. So kind of April, June, September is the plan for these 3 transitions that we're going to talk through today in systems.
And I can't wait for these to be out.
I know.
and at the same time, you're dropping, just so that people know, when is Money Transition 2 and 3 coming out?
Yes, in March and June. Yeah.
Okay.
So stay tuned for those dates and sign up.
And like I said, I view this as forever is a big word, but this journey isn't going to end. We're going to keep building on this framework for as long as we're kicking.
Yeah.
And I think we wanted to get systems in people's hands because, well, several reasons. There's a lot of new systems on their way out right now. We're working on some cool stuff with CRMs but also this is something so tangible and accessible that we've been very intentional about building a lot of these systems for people along the way.
Yeah.
And I think what we want to do is just start creating a roadmap and a framework for thinking about systems more clearly, so that as we go through all the stuff we're working on, that we start to put those into place with a little bit more of a context.
Yes.
So we're going to jump into systems just at a very high level today. We covered this at Reconnect a few weeks ago. I think it was very high level.
Yeah.
It may have actually left some people saying, whoa, hold on.
What is that?
What do I do with this practically?
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing to say is hold your horses. Practical is coming.
Yes.
So those 3 modules, transition 1, 2, and 3, will come out this year.
Yep.
And I think our goal today is just to talk through the idea of building systems in your real estate business.
Yeah, and I think it's powerful for me because to see the end in mind. Like, where am I going?
Yes.
That's such the power of all 4 of these is where do I actually need to go and how do I get there? So powerful.
So help me
both
be succinct and make sure that we cover all the bases here. Let's just start at the very, very top with what on earth we're even talking about when we're thinking about systems. And there's really 2 things always floating around in my head anytime we're thinking of our business or thinking about systems. The first thing is Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Well, there's really several, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant is the name of the book. The Cash Flow Quadrant is a book we've taught this concept. It's one of our core philosophies here. It's in our Rethink series. And it's essentially just that there's really 4 quadrants where you can live. The first is an employee, where you have a job. And that's where most people live, and it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
It's really the time and effort economy.
Yep.
Some people switch out of the time and effort economy into the second quadrant, S, where they're self-employed. They own their job. And that is most closely related to becoming a realtor.
Realtors do. Yep.
Realtors become self-employed. They own their job. They get to pick how many hours they work and whether they work or not.
Yes.
And then their results are directly correlated to that.
Yeah.
We're into that, right? We help agents build a real estate business and start selling real estate. We teach them how. But our true passion has
that
always
next
been
transition.
shifting from S to B.
Yes.
And S to B is where we go from self-employed to owning a business. And a business is defined as owning a set of systems. And so with that as and just to wrap the story up, we then shift from owning a business to I, which is investing, which is where we take our business, its proceeds, its infrastructure, and its freedom, and we reinvest that into, well, the most basic example, real estate, but other businesses, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So that's always in my head. And the principal thought there is that going from S to B is principally about the development of a set of systems that define the difference between a business and being self-employed. Is a self-employed individual
just kind of floating around out there, kind of just doing things willy-nilly-ish.
The way we define it is winging it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's nothing, well, I was going to say there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great place to start.
Yeah.
It is not what you get to build if you want to be intentional about it.
Right.
So I'm always thinking about the transition from S to B, and every one of our agents, that's my passion in my heart, is how do I help you take this thing from, learn how to sell, but ultimately start to develop a series of systems that define how you do what you do, so that you're not winging it every single time you engage in a set of protocols that ultimately are going to be duplicatable and sustainable, because there's certain things that we do every single time in a sale. Mm-hmm. So that's thought number one. And then thought number two is from E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth Revisited. And that's just the notion that, well, I'll just say it, systems run the business, people run the system. So what we do wrong is we tend to think that a business is, what we do inside of our business is we manage a set of people.
Yeah.
What our real job as a business owner, however big or small, is to create a set of systems of how things should be done. Standard operating procedures. Yep. This is how we do what we do in order to achieve the outcome we want, and then to find great people. Now, those great people, some of those processes I still do.
Yes.
And some of them an administrator might do. But the point is that a well-run business is a business where how we do what we do is defined.
And defined, documented. It has a plan. Somebody else can run it, right?
The business is run by the systems.
Yeah.
And people then run those systems. Systems run the business. People run the systems. So with those two thoughts in mind, that's really what I think we all need to be thinking about when we think of survival to significance systems. We're starting in a place where we have none. Everything's winging it. We're making it up as we go.
Yep.
Our first step is to create some stability in some foundational systems and some basic infrastructure, so that some of the most sustainable or duplicatable parts of what we do have some system to them.
Yep.
As we move to success, it's about starting to think about that more strategically and creating departments essentially within our small real estate business. And again, it might be a team of one, it might be a team of 20.
Yep.
Regardless, there's certain roles, functions, I'll call them departments, that your business needs to have. And then finally is putting on our three strategic hats. So I would first just start with saying, if you're intentional about building a good real estate business, I'm going to encourage everyone, if you haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, and frankly, Rich Dad, Poor Dad as well, you should. And if you haven't read the E-Myth Revisited, I think those are great starting places as well.
Yeah.
So if we jump into this, let's
through the three transitions, right?
And let's go backwards.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start at the very end with what it is that we're actually picturing if we pull this off.
Yeah.
And so let's start with significance. And let's just talk about the final transition. So first encouragement here is, if you're following along.
Yes, check out the resource in the Forge, get the overview so you can kind of see in the picture of what we're talking through here.
So we're looking at our one-page roadmap for survival to significance of systems.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the final picture. And our final, I'm trying to think of how to set this up right. disclaimer here is that this is going to be different for everyone.
Yeah.
And so what we've created here is a roadmap that at the highest possible level encapsulates what everyone's going to need to have.
Yeah.
The nuance of how your business is going to be structured, what your team structure looks like.
The who and the how, right? All of that's different.
Is absolutely open to subjective interpretation and how you want to build your business.
Yeah.
But I don't care if you're a Fortune 500 company or a one-person real estate operation.
Yeah.
This infrastructure that we're showing you here ultimately does define what your business is going to have to look like. So starting with the end in mind means really what Michael Gerber teaches in his book. You might be a one-man stand, but your business still has all of these moving parts.
Yes.
You don't actually have a janitor and you don't actually have a CEO, but do you clean up your crap in your office? Well, then you have a janitor.
Yep.
And do you set aside time to go think strategically about
Where
your
am I going?
business?
Yep.
You have a CEO. So we're going to start with all of those hats on our head.
Yep.
And all of the departments that we need to run a successful business and then work our way backwards from that. So our picture ends with really a house.
Yeah, I kind of love this picture. I'm kind of super glad we landed here.
It works.
It does.
A business that is well put together with proper systems has at least these things. It must have a strategic business plan underneath it as a foundation.
Yeah.
And I think we overthink this. You've created great modules for people on this. This can be super complex. It doesn't have to be that complex.
No.
We have to know where we're going, who we are, what we value,
Yes.
what we're doing to create value in the marketplace. We've got to have some goals. We've got to have some metrics.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we've got to understand what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that also should include at this level rocks on an annual basis.
Yes.
The key initiatives we know we're working on.
What are we actually trying to do this year, right?
What are we building? What
Yes.
are we growing? What are we creating?
Mm-hmm.
And, the best recommendations I've got for that, Traction is a great book. I know we use the EOS model for that, to think through our strategic planning.
Yeah.
At a realtor level, I think the modules you've created for everyone, Angela, and that we've got in circulation are a brilliant starting place for this. But I think that is the foundation of any business from a systems perspective.
Yeah.
You can't build the rest of the building
without this.
If you don't have clear vision
Yeah.
on what matters and what you're doing and why you're doing it. Where are you focusing your time and attention? What's your game plan? And I think this matters because as you think about our 3 pillars that we're going to talk about, our leads, our transaction, and our marketing management systems, what those are going to be and how they're going to be structured is completely dependent upon which direction we're marching in.
Yeah. So like when you jump into these resources, you'll kind of see that each of these departments that we're going to talk about next is represented through these modules in your business planning. So you can kind of think about each one separately and you got to know where you're going. Yeah.
So to restate that, our final picture where we're looking to land is that we have a clear vision and strategy and mission and goals in our strategic business plan. Then our building is held up by 3 principal departments, 3 principal functions.
Yeah.
You can think of this any way you want. We call them the 3 pillars.
Yeah.
And those 3 pillars are your lead management system. And that's going to include a whole lot of components, and we're going to work backwards into those.
Yeah.
But we've got to, no business stands without the pillar of generating opportunities, incubating those opportunities, moving those opportunities through conversion to the funnel to create the actual capacity to have a client that we can serve.
Yep.
So there's a whole series of systems and processes and protocols and standard operating procedures and improvement and growth that we have to think about there in order for our business to work and our building to stand.
Mm-hmm.
The second column or pillar is that we have to have a
plan, system.
Well,
lots of things.
We have to have I was going to say clean glass, which is to borrow Buffini's metaphor. But you can do all the work in the world to create all these opportunities. If you don't have a brilliant service that you actually provide at the end of the day for your buyers, for your sellers, from the initial presentations through the actual service plans to guiding them through the pending phase, the closing phase, that is what I would call your transaction management system. And this is, there's a whole lot of platforms, there's a whole lot of processes there, but ultimately it's a fundamentally different part of what we do. And if you think about these as departments, imagine that your little real estate business, each of these someone got hired to do.
Yeah.
Someone would be focused on generating and incubating the leads. Someone different with different skills, different capabilities, different focus, different intention would be working on serving these clients through the process. And frankly, it might be a different person that you would hire if you had a 30-person company to work the buyers than works the sellers. They're fundamentally different processes. Yes. And we have to think through those processes because we have to be obsessed about creating a remarkable client experience. That is a pillar. If we do a great job on the first pillar, but we suck at the middle pillar, again, our building doesn't stand. We need to have that well thought through and systematized. And every time I say that, there's no end here.
There's always improvement there.
We're always working through this. So no matter where you are, it's worth noting that you aren't where you want to be, almost certainly.
Yeah.
And you aren't where you were.
Well, yeah.
And so, I think there's a inclination to try and imagine the outcome here.
Right.
And I think the outcome is a journey.
Yeah. Yep.
But we got two major pillars there: our lead management system, our transaction management system, and then finally, what we have as a pillar here is our marketing management system. Our building stands best and better when through both of those, we're doing a great job of creating top of mind awareness.
Yes.
And especially in the business that we're in, there is a significant opportunity we are a brand. We build a brand awareness. We create a narrative in the mind of the people that we work with. And so there's a lot of work to be done always in a very dynamic and shifting world of social media and video and whatever, but also property marketing is a big part of what we do. Part of the service we provide is the capacity to market these homes in a way that these sellers feel great about and deserve. So those are our three principal pillars on which our building stands. And there's a million moving parts there. And again, the inclination is to want to have them all and list them all. And our modules are going to help you with that process.
Yes.
But for now, I just need you to think through all the stuff you've got and how it fits into those various spaces. Now, again, our final picture as a house stands on a foundation on these three major pillars. But the roof of that house is going to be what we call our three strategic hats.
Yes.
Inside of your business, inside of my business, and inside of every Fortune 500 company is a set of hats that need to be worn
and thought through,
that also, just like these departments, serve different functions and maybe need different skill sets and gifts. You need three strategic hats to ensure that your business is working correctly and that you have systems in place for these three different things. So our CEO hat, our CFO hat, and our COO hat. And the way we define that in our little graphic is that our CEO is really the hat that's focused on the vision and the people. Now, you can expand that a lot, and there's lots of great literature and good books that we'll actually recommend in that third module. But the purpose of the CEO is to ensure that we're marching in the right direction, that we've got the right people on the bus,
yes, absolutely,
and that they have what they need. And so that, again, might be just taking care of you and making sure you got a good business plan and making sure that you define how much you do and don't work. It then begins to include the same thing of pouring into your administrative team and or your agents. And if nothing else, as we get to the team module later on, it's also building relationships with and pouring into your vendor relationships,
your referral network,
your administrative team inside of Century 21. But the CEO hat is a very, very intentional hat that you have to put on. And there's a set of systems as well that the CEO needs to engage in. The most basic examples are a CEO every year needs to ensure that they're intentionally spending time investing in their people. A CEO needs to intentionally set time aside to think about and plan for the strategic vision. They need to be reading and learning and growing and understanding what's going on in the marketplace. They need to be constantly imagining new improvements to not just the systems, because that's going to be our COO's role, but just where the business is headed and what we can do to improve our value proposition.
I think about it like as a person that's truly keeping you on track. Like, where are we trying to go? Are we staying on track? And how are we incorporating new or different things along the way?
And you've got to be that person. For your company. The other person you've got to be for your company until you get so big that you can hire this out is your CFO. And that's the hat that wakes up maybe every morning, but probably at least once a month. And looks at the financials, looks at the reports, creates the reports, because you don't have a 6-person accounting team in real estate, but builds out reporting to track everything from our leads analysis, like where are we spending money, where are we making money? So we're playing red light, green light. They're taking a look at our P&L if we hopefully have one. And if you don't have a P&L, you're probably not in significance. We'll go back to our money module. You've got some work to do to get to that place. But it's also, this is a hat that if you've just started selling real estate last week, just so you know, you actually have a CFO hat.
Yes, you are wearing it, whether
you're just not wearing it very well.
Yeah.
And maybe the more important focus right now is not to focus on that hat, it's to go get some leads, right?
Yep.
And so we've got our CFO hat and then our COO hat, and this is going to be our operations director. They're going to be focused on the plan, executing the plan with excellence, implementing the systems, orchestrating and organizing everything that we do.
Yeah.
So it's a very big and vague graphic, but it absolutely, without question, defines the architecture
Yes.
of what a healthy real estate business at any scale looks like. You must have not just these things, you have to have the process in place for all of those respective things. They have to be, this is how I do this.
Yeah.
This is when I do this.
Yep.
And this is like the platform that I might do this on.
Yeah.
And that is where we're trying to take everybody. And again, the hard part about this is everybody wants just give me the answers.
Yeah. Tell me exactly how to do this.
But we've got what, 200 and something agents in this company. You got a whole bunch. We got like how many? Almost 45 people in Golden Circle.
Yeah.
These are agents all producing north of 6 figures.
Yep.
Some of them earning $500,000 to $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Not one of them.
Has this all perfectly structured.
Well, none of them have it the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Every single one of them have this slightly differently. But what's not untrue about any of them is that every single one of them has to think like a CEO at some point.
Yep.
A CFO, a CEO, they have to think through their leads, their transactions, and their marketing, and they have to build that on top of a foundation. So if you're one of those people out there that's like, yeah, just give me the freaking answers, I'm sorry, this is not for you. But I can tell you that the journey of building a business, the joy and the beauty of it is that it is just a game of starting with a complete mess and slowly but surely building a set of systems that eventually become this. And yours will look different than everybody else's, but it's going to have these things.
Yeah.
And I think the power of what we've built here is that it's helpful to see the end so that we can, as we're doing small things, which is what we're going to work backwards into now, we can see where they fit into the great architecture of what we're actually building. It's a blueprint.
Yeah. It's just super helpful to be able to say, this belongs here, and this is what I'm doing. This is the part that I'm developing right now or working on or figuring out one thing at a time. That's the thing I can say on this one too. One thing at a time.
Yeah, and that's how I feel today with our organization. It's every week, every month, you know this, you're on our leadership team. We're constantly just working on tweaking, implementing, and changing systems of how we do what we do.
Yeah.
So look, we're going to work backwards from there real quick because what our final transition is going to be at the end of the year is really to dig in with all of you guys on the CEO, CFO, and COO hats.
Yeah.
The 3 hats is our third transition.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to that because I think it's the one that maybe I've got the most to add into. But I'll also confess that it's an area I'm growing in every single day. Yep. No one's taught me, right?
Had to figure it out.
Just like you, we're figuring this out as we go.
Yep.
But if we move backwards to then our second transition, which you said will be coming out when approximately?
June, the summer.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Our second transition then is going to be focused in on specifically building out those 3 principal pillars of your business.
Yeah. Yep.
And I know you're in the middle of building this out as we speak. But if you take a look at the picture, what we know for sure is at the very least, your leads management is going to include 5 spokes, which you could be something else for you. But what we mean by that is your intentional lead generation strategy, diversified, intentional, written game plan that you can actually engage on a weekly and monthly basis, daily basis. So 5 spokes. It's going to include some way to manage your database because you're building a relational based business. And even if you're not, we're in the relationship business, you must have a place that you track and build and grow your relationships.
Yes.
That is a non-negotiable system that we're going to have.
For sure.
We also know that as we build out our business, we've got to start thinking about incubation of leads. Some of our leads are what we call now leads. Some of our leads are what I call later leads.
Yep.
And that means some people are going to raise their hand now, but they're hanging out for 18 to
3 years even sometimes.
Yes. And we must have systems in place that allow us to, and look, let's just jump into it. At the baseline, that's nothing more than setting a calendar appointment inside your calendar for 6 months from now to make sure you reach out to that person. I used to have cards, like
same.
And I had a pile on my desk, and the first pile was daily, the second pile was weekly, monthly.
And quarterly. I had quarterly as well.
And I simply had on my calendar a system that every day I had to work through my daily pile. Every week I would have to work through my weekly pile. And then I would schedule every second Saturday. And that was my, what did I call it? High impact prospecting.
Yeah.
And then that was my day to work through everything. I would make sure that everything got refreshed. Everyone reached, there was some point of contact. Yep. That's a basic system for incubation. And I think that we all need to have that in our leads pillar.
Yeah.
There's more. And we'll dig into some of them, and some of them you'll have to figure out yourself. But we'll focus on that in our second transition. In our transaction management pillar, we know that we need to have a process for serving our listings and our buyers. Those are fundamentally different processes.
Yes.
We've got great templates for you on this.
Yes. And even more coming. Yeah.
And some of those things are standardized in a way. Like we always recommend once a week, you call all your listings, and we have good scripting and guidance for you on that. But some of it is completely customized. All of you have figured out different ways that you want to create value for your sellers throughout that process. Yeah. And I know we're focusing a lot on that right now because our listings are spending more time on the market.
Yeah, digging back into that.
But our listing management process, our buyer service process, and then our pending to close process is super important because this is where the clean gloss experience, where we can absolutely ruin it. But then also our after sales, and then our infrastructure, our paperwork, where we not just track our paperwork, but how we share it with our clients, how intentional we are about our communications back and forth with our clients. And the same goes with our after sales.
Yeah.
Do we have a plan? A plan, which could be as simple as a scheduled structure of day 7, day 30, day 90 follow-up calls, which is frankly what I would recommend.
Just start with your calendar. Yeah.
Or it might be as simple as, yes, after sales, I always do preferred client club. I invest the $40 for that for 3 years.
Yeah.
Those are, for anyone still struggling with this, those are a system.
Yeah.
It's a duplicatable, sustainable process that if you weren't doing it, because you were gone for 2 weeks, somebody else could.
Yeah.
Because remember, the system runs the business, and you are the person that runs the system, but somebody else could.
Yes.
And until somebody else could run the system, you don't have a system. You're just self-employed, and you're selling houses.
Yep.
And then again, what we're going to dig into is our marketing management pillar. And that's going to include at the least, obviously, our listing marketing plan, which we have to be super intentional about. We must have this put together in our minds.
Yes.
We don't have, and we're actually going to start with that as one of our core foundational systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we must have that plan together. We must have ready, locked and loaded presentations.
Buyer and seller, absolutely.
We can't be coming up with this every single time. Our social media plan, our brand plan, which is going to relate to social media, but not exclusively.
Nope.
And brand doesn't just mean ads and our logo.
It's brand awareness. When people think of real estate, do they think of you? It's growing that.
Well, and it's what they think.
Yes.
What is it at the strategic level I'm wanting people to think when they think of me?
Yep.
And what am I doing in order to build that thought in their mind, reinforce that thought in their mind? And so that's certainly going to be a part of our marketing intentionality. And then client appreciation, which you could put in leads, but we've intentionally put in the marketing space, because when we think about our client events, when we think about our pop buys, when we think about all of the ongoing engagement that we have with our database, yes, it is about generating leads by way of referrals.
Right.
But it does fall in the marketing schematic when I think about archetypes, for example.
Right. And top of mind awareness, like that's what I'm specifically thinking about there, is continuing to market top of mind to your people.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you want to put that in the leads category,
feel free.
Be my guest. Yeah. The picture is not here to constrict. It's to help you think about this creatively.
Strategically, yep.
And obviously, in that second transition, we're building those 3 pillars on top of a more strategic business plan, which we have in our final picture.
Yep.
And if we work backwards, as you follow the picture, it's kind of weird working backwards through this. Our first step is transition 1, and we call that business foundations.
Yep.
So if our third transition, we call 3 strategic hats. Our second transition is building out the 3 pillars, and working backwards before that, we're going from survival to stability. And what we're saying, in order to go from survival to stability, there's just 3 fundamental things that we know you need to do.
Yep.
The first is there's a handful, I think it's 6, 7 maybe, of
6
basic systems that every single real estate agent has to have in place. And by systems, we don't mean a platform or a software program. We mean a process for how we do this. And it could be super simple without any technology. It could be super complex with a whole bunch of moving parts and people. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you have in your mind and on paper a process of how you do
each
this.
of these things, yes.
And those are, very simply, that everyone, to start with, to get to stability, you do not have the beginnings of a business
without.
If you don't have an active database, spreadsheet, heck, a really, really good-looking napkin, I would settle for. But if it's in your brain or in your phone,
it is not.
You do not have a system for your database.
Correct.
And so when I say database, and I'm so excited for this module, I don't just mean the place that we put them. I think we mean our methodology for engagement and communication.
Build, sort, qualify, I think of 100%. In there. Yes.
What is our ongoing care, connection, and communication plan with the people in our database? Where do we track them? How do we track the communication? And how do we schedule future communications?
When we're reaching out again.
That's what we mean by database.
Absolutely.
Next, foundational system. You must have 5 spokes.
Must.
Now, call it whatever you want. Pick a different name. Pick a different system. Use different templates. You must have a intentional and diversified lead generation plan. And if it's only in your head, it's not a plan.
Absolutely
not. It's a plan, but it's not sustainable and it's not a system that anybody else can follow because no one else could possibly execute on that plan.
Yep.
So we know 5 spokes is there. We know that presentations is absolutely foundational. And what I imagine when I think of this is, if my phone rings today and somebody says, I want to meet with you to talk about buying a house tomorrow.
What in the world
do I know the pieces of paper I bring in print? Do I know the information and data that I pull? Do I have a process of questions that I ask?
Yeah, what's your dialogue generally look like, right?
It's the dialogue as much as it is the pieces of paper that I bring. And do I have testimonials that I provide? Do I have a follow-up protocol? So I think buyer presentation, I think listing presentation, and then I also think pricing presentation. And I think of that as slightly distinct from listing presentation because most listing presentations will include both a marketing presentation, how I do what I do to get your home sold, and a pricing presentation. And that same pricing presentation oftentimes is then used also as future presentations when I think about price adjustments and corrections.
For sure.
So we've got to have our presentations put in place. We've got to have a listing marketing plan. If tomorrow my best friend says, hey, after your presentation, which was terrific, I want to list my house. Do we have not perfect, but
the beginnings of,
generally speaking, steps A through Z of how I go about marketing the property?
You put the sign in the ground, then what?
It's embarrassing to admit, but 90% of agents, the answer to that question would be like, we sign the paperwork, we get the sign, we get it on the MLS. And there's so much more to properly servicing and marketing and managing that listing relationship throughout that step.
Absolutely.
And so we've got great resources for that already, but I'm super excited to see those in the module.
Couple weeks.
A buyer-seller service plan. When I think about this, I'm not thinking about the marketing of the listing. I'm thinking about the ongoing communications, the feedback loops, how we guide the seller through the process beginning to end. And that includes managing the inspections, managing appraisal process all the way through to the day of closing and afterwards, right?
Yeah, and same as buyers. Yeah,
100%.
Sure. Yeah.
And then transaction management. And that is going to be, starting with our paperwork. And again, we've gone backwards here. So you can jump ahead on transaction management and look at how that's going to fit into the 3 pillars.
Yeah.
And it gives you a reference point. But if you didn't know the house we were building, if you
really
didn't know the end, if you didn't know the 3 pillars, and all you knew was, these are 6 systems that I need to build in order to stabilize and begin to build a business, then that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Start there. I think we're just giving you greater context for where you're actually heading.
Yep.
So that was step 1. You must build your foundational systems. Now, here's the good news, Angela, and you know this. 90% of that we've got for you.
Yes.
And if you've been in our team for any amount of time, 6 months, 18 months, 10 years, you've been building those with us from the beginning.
You may be further along than you think you are because of just what you've been doing.
Because of who we are and what we do. We've always been intentional about building better businesses rather than just teaching sales skills. Yeah. So you've probably got more of this together than you think. I think the framework here is to audit that, take a look at it, and ask yourself honestly, do I have my 5 spokes, or do I have a lead generation plan that is systematized, that I've processed in a way that if I were to go away for 3 weeks,
that's the key.
I could hypothetically ask another agent, this is strictly hypothetical, to step in and continue the activities that I was engaging in. That means, do I know what call I'm making, who I'm making it to, and do I have some tracking mechanism for that?
Right. Is it repeatable? Could someone else step in and do it? I think that's 100%. The key for thinking through that audit. Yes.
As a guiding principle, that'll help you build it in a way.
Yes.
And again, back to Michael Gerber, that's what he's coaching in eMyth, is can you build something that somebody else could ultimately copy? His framework for that is to talk about it in the context where whatever business you're in, plumbing, real estate, doesn't matter, build it as if you were building a franchise, that you wanted to sell those processes to someone else that they could copy it. And that might be too much for some people to think through. And if that blows your mind, just go back and ask yourself, do I have these 6 basic systems in place? If you follow the steps along the stepping stones, you're going to find that all of a sudden you're pretty high up a mountain with a really good view.
Yeah.
So that was number 1. Number 2, you got to have a basic business plan. And the basic business plan, again, your templates are terrific. We've stripped those down to other versions as well. And I think your module will be very, very clear about
the essential pieces to make it the basic plan, right?
Essential is a great way to put it.
Yeah.
What are the non-negotiable components that should include? And then finally, a schedule. And
seems very... That was like it's like, oh, duh. That probably makes sense to put here.
But what I'm looking forward to is you spelling out some of what that ought to include. Because I think saying, well, I have a calendar and I know that I have team meetings on Tuesday and I have to go to Reconnect on Monday. That's a good start. But if we look at our listing marketing plan, if we look at our buyer and seller service plans, we're going to realize that our week has to become more intentional. I know at the very least I need time for listing feedback. I know I need daily lead generation and prospecting time.
Yes.
I need separate time for incubation, like we talked about. When do I go through my pile of later leads? Do I have a process for that and a system for that? And so I think schedule, we can get pretty specific on this, and I think really help people understand how to structure their week with a little more intentionality.
Yeah.
I know that when you were being trained, I had templates for like the perfect week. Do you remember that at all?
We still have those. We invite people to those calendar invites that we've created. Yeah.
I can't believe we've still got that.
Yeah, we do.
That's marvelous.
Yeah.
So look, that's a lot. And I feel like I've rambled here, but hopefully if you're listening, what you take away from this is several points. There is no one process here.
Yeah.
Don't become overwhelmed by the notion of building systems. It tends to be the most misunderstood portion of what we do here.
I agree.
You might be further along than you think. Take a look at these graphics and understand the roadmap. Know that yours will be different than everybody else's. But what you're building here is this house, a strategic roof that guides how we do what we do. It oversees our people, our numbers and reporting, and our daily activities and how we do what we do. It understands that only works if we've got 3 pillars or departments that oversee or structure the core essential components of what we actually deliver in our value proposition, and all that stands on top of a strategic foundation. All of that, we have systems in place for you to use, leverage. The best of you will take those and build upon them and have done that.
Yeah.
That is what we've always been doing.
Yeah.
And this just creates a roadmap for you to understand it with a little more clarity. Yeah. What would you say to all that?
Yeah, no, this is super, super impactful for me. I think that, yes, I've been a part of a lot of this journey and in my own business and then in the way that we have been coaching, but I have never seen it in the picture that is giving me so much more clarity of where we need to help people go and grow. So that's the power of all of these for me, is just starting where we are and starting with the end in mind to be able to see it and to put things where they belong. Yeah, right? It's just so powerful.
We've always been doing this.
Yeah.
But somehow the picture creates so much more clarity.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm super excited for what you guys, and I mean, I know I'm in the backstage helping you with it, but super excited to see what you guys are rolling out here. And I think this is going to be very impactful for people. And I guess I just close by saying I'm excited. It's one word. The other one's proud. When I see not just what we're building here, but when I think of our team and I think of the 20-year journey that some of our top agents have been on, they may not have had this picture in mind.
But they've been doing it.
They've been doing it.
Yeah.
And we've been helping them do it. And it's getting more and more clear. We help agents build better businesses that are more profitable, sustainable, and enjoyable. has been something we've talked about for years, and we've been doing all the parts of that. To see that start to come together in more clear pictures that I think will help the next generation of team members that we're bringing on begin with more clarity.
Yeah.
It's very exciting for me because I say the same thing every time. I think it's my job to keep repeating these messages, but it really is cool to do what we do in real estate, to serve people in a transaction that's meaningful the way it is, and to earn what we get to earn when we do that well. I mean, most agents are failing. Most of them are bankrupt. Most of them are getting out.
Survival and failure mode, honestly.
But the ones that are doing it well and actually give a rip and build a business that's worth owning and serve people in a way that they deserve, there's just unbelievable opportunity in what we do. And so I think it's just a thing of beauty. And I'm excited I love the space we get to play in. So to help agents do that even better across leads, systems, team, and money, I just think it's a really cool framework. So for those of you that are following along, you're seeing this play out in real time. Yep. We're building this as we speak, but it's not new. There's nothing new here. It's just a better framing narrative for us to help you build better businesses to get to where you want to go. So.
Yeah. Super fun.
Well, good luck on all the work that you've got ahead of you.
Yeah, and stay tuned, everyone. So keep an eye on things and keep checking out the Forge and come to these classes as we teach them. It's going to be fun.
Thanks, everyone.